Welcome. Today we very much appreciate John Mackey coming here to share his perspective on conscious capitalism. This is a busy man. As you know, in last year, Whole Foods merged with Wild Oats. The good news is that this merger might finally bring a store to our region, well, Milford. The bad news is that the FTC tried to block this merger, and it's remarkable that of all the mergers the Bush administration might have gone against, Wrigley's, Mars, they decide to pick on the one grocer extending its footprint by buying a poorly run, nearly failing Wild Oats. Most CEOs would have folded at that point, but John fought the law, and so far it looks like he's won. But stay tuned. There's good news, bad news here. The good news is that he's 100% in the right. His main competitors aren't other organic grocers, but grocers selling organic food. And what that means is Walmart is his competitor. That's also the bad news. People have discovered the secret that organic food not only tastes better, is better for you, but also is more profitable. And so now he has to compete with Walmart. And that's a tough business, not one that I envy for anyone. I'm still a believer and an investor in what is typically a low-margin, high-turnover business. Whole Foods is one of the only 14 companies to be in the Fortune magazine's 100 Best Places to Work for all 11 years that they've actually compiled this list. When it comes to good governance, Whole Foods has the foresight to choose one of our alums, Linda Mason, for their board of directors. And their stores continue to delight me as they achieve what Starbucks has called the third place. I actually look forward to going grocery shopping, and that's not just because I get to do a shelf check. What I most appreciate about Whole Foods is that they are the most open to new ideas and a source of innovation for the whole foods industry. As we teach in the Innovator course, it's difficult, almost impossible, to create a large organization that's open to new ideas. A little over 11 years ago, my partner and SOM classmate Seth Goldman met with Mike Sienna, the Mid-Atlantic Whole Foods buyer. We thought that there should be a market for great tasting, healthy, ready-to-drink iced tea that tasted like tea, not liquid candy. And fortunately, they agreed. Seth brought the thermos, and this is actually the real thermos, with him, filled with home-brewed iced tea in the trunk, washed off a Snapple bottle, slapped on a hand-painted label, and did the demo. The buyer bought a truck, and then we had to figure out how to make it. But without that order, I doubt we'd be in business today. So thank you, John, for having built an institution that has made such a positive difference in so many of our lives. We're all ears.
Okay. Of course, it'd be easier to compete with Walmart if Barry wasn't selling to them. Anyway, we are trying to settle with the FTC right now. I don't know if it's very difficult to win when you're fighting the federal government. They have basically unlimited funds, which they take from you through taxes. So hopefully there'll be an announcement on that within the next couple of weeks. I think this is like an hour presentation, and I'm trying to cram into 30 minutes. So I am going to talk pretty rapidly because I know we want to save as much time for questions as possible. I predict someday we get the perspective of time and distance, that historians are going to look back on the 20th century, and they're going to have seen that there was a great battle that was fought between capitalism and socialism. And they will see that capitalism won that battle. It works better. Unfortunately, it did not capture the minds of the intellectuals or the hearts of the people. Capitalism is not loved. It is not trusted. And neither are corporations. Corporations are the most influential institutions in the world, and yet how are they widely perceived? As greedy, selfish, exploitative, basically interested only in the bottom line. I also believe that the anti-globalization movement that we find today is really an anti-corporation movement. People don't like corporations, and they're afraid corporations are trying to take over the world. I found it fascinating, although of course bad for business, this financial crisis and the recession, some say even depression, that we might be entering into, is blamed on greedy corporations. And as if greed was somehow or another recently invented, that it didn't exist prior to this latest downturn. Rather than where I think the true blame lies, which is on bad government regulations, which have set up the wrong incentives, and terrible monetary policies, which have gunned the money supply and led to the massive increase in debt that we've got. But however you stand on the issues of the day, I think we can all agree that corporations and capitalism have a serious branding problem in the world today. And it looks to me like we're sort of taking a step back towards a more socialistic worldview. And I want to propose that instead, that we could have in the 21st century an alternative to either traditional capitalism or conscious capitalism, which I call conscious capitalism. And basically founded on three basic principles. First, that the enterprise has a deeper purpose beyond maximizing profits and shareholder value. Second, that the enterprise can be managed to optimize value for all of the major stakeholders in the organization. And third, that servant leadership to the enterprise and to its stakeholders, as opposed to what we typically find in corporations, self-centered leadership, where the executives try to get out as much as they can get. It's interesting in the times that we're in to step back for a minute and ask ourselves the question that what's the purpose of a business? I mean, if you ask that question to most people, average person on the street, they'll say, what's the purpose of business? It's to make money. Duh, that's the purpose of business. And yet, if we ask that same question about what's the purpose of a doctor, we don't get the answer, duh, to make money. No, doctors, their purpose is to heal the sick. If we ask what the purpose of a teacher is, it's not to earn a living, it's to educate people. I think, isn't Yale founded on those principles, and the professors here are trying to educate the next generation? If we ask the question, what's the purpose of an architect, design buildings, we can ask that question of any particular profession we've got, and you will not come up with to maximize profits. Even if you ask that question about lawyers, they would tell you that, of course, they're promoting justice and make sure that justice and fairness is in our society. So why do we think of business as its purpose is to maximize profits and shareholder value? I would submit that's largely a myth. That I have known many, many, many entrepreneurs, and I have yet to meet an entrepreneur who has ever told me that they started their business because they just wanted to make as much money as possible. Actually, that's not true. Wayne Huizinga once told me that's why he started his businesses. But I did ask, I got to meet Bill Gates fairly recently, I was talking to him about it, and he had a vision of putting personal computers on every desktop and having the best software in the world. And entrepreneurs start their businesses for a variety of reasons, but generally it's about passion. It's about something they deeply care about and what they want to do in the world. And so it raises the question, who defines what the purpose of any business is? And I'll submit it's the entrepreneur who creates the business who initially defines what the purpose of that business is. In today's society, the entrepreneurs that will be in the 21st century and entrepreneurs of the conscious business are also entrepreneurs of meaning. That is one of the most important things they do, is they define the purpose and meaning of the enterprise that they create. Now, what's been fascinating, I started the company 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, and I've watched the purpose evolve, because when Renee and I started it, we just had fuzzy concepts of it. Yeah, we want to sell healthy food and earn a living and help people eat better. And the purpose has deepened, and it's broadened over time. And what I find fascinating is that it's evolved. It's evolved because of the input we've gotten from all of our stakeholders. That at Whole Foods, customers are helping us evolve our purpose. The team members are. The suppliers are. The communities that we do business in, they all have a stake in the business, and they are all helping us evolve our purpose. And I believe that businesses will flourish best over the long run who continue to evolve their purpose. I also believe that great companies have great purposes. And yeah, I did not originate this. It came from Plato, the good, the true, and the beautiful. I did add the heroic in there as a fourth great purpose. And those are just the biggest abstractions that I could come up with. But if you think of the companies that you most admire, I would submit that probably without exception, every one of them is animated by a deeper purpose. Some that express perhaps the pursuit of the good through love and care. A great example of that is Southwest Airlines. If you look at what their New York Stock Exchange symbol is, it's love, L-U-V. If you've talked to Herb Kelleher, he'll tell you that's what they're doing at Southwest Airlines while he's smoking a cigarette and taking down some Jack Daniels. But Southwest is following this deeper purpose of service and care. If you look at the pursuit of truth, if you think of a company like Google or Genentech or Intel, imagine how exciting it is to discover something that no one has ever known before in history, to create a product that takes and advances humanity. And you've done it because of your passion for the truth, the passion to know, your curiosity. The great corporations and companies out there, there are many that are following that particular higher purpose. We look at the excellence in the quest of perfection as a manifestation of the beautiful. What is Apple Computer? Every product they've ever produced has been extraordinarily beautiful. I mean, isn't the iPod beautiful? iTunes, Macintosh, those are the initial Apple II. Or Apple and then Apple I and Apple II were beautiful. I think Stephen Jobs has always had a passion for manifesting the beautiful in our world, and we've been the beneficiaries of it. Certainly any great artist, we recognize that, but I think, I would argue that Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway is an example of beauty. Buffett's philosophy of investing and the way he views corporations, to me, is beautiful. And I think he's manifested that in the world. And the heroic, changing and improving the world, two of my favorite examples. One is Bill Gates, who's oftentimes been the corporate villain because he became the richest man in the world. But Microsoft has been a transformative corporation. And we see it even more clearly now that he's left Microsoft and he's doing the Gates Foundation, which is attempting to do great good in the world. Gates himself is an heroic individual. I think Microsoft is an example of at least when it was in its earlier manifestations, was pursuing this. Other example would be Muhammad Yunus and what he's done with Grameen Bank in terms of ending poverty in the world today. If that's not a heroic purpose, I don't know what is. I call this the paradox of profits. And I like to say, since when I talk to young people, that I'm now old enough to speak with some authority about happiness. I have found that people that pursue happiness as a primary goal don't achieve it, or seldom do. That in fact, happiness is a byproduct of other things. It's a byproduct of having purpose, service to others, excellence, personal growth, friendship, generosity, compassion, forgiveness, love. If we pursue those virtues, one day we may wake up and discover that we are very, very happy. And the people that pursue happiness tend to be narcissists, self-involved, and, my experience, not particularly happy. I would argue by analogy that profits are similar, that they are best achieved in most enterprises by not making them the primary goal, that they are a byproduct of having a deeper business purpose, having great products and services, customer satisfaction, customer happiness, social and environmental responsibility. And I will argue today that long-term profits are maximized by not making them the primary goal, and it starts by thinking of business as not a machine. The early economists taught, they were so fascinated in the industrial age with the idea that you could have a perpetual motion machine, that the enterprise, by taking land, labor, and capital and combining them, you could spit them out in terms of profit, reinvest the profits into more enterprise, you can have this perpetual motion machine. But today, a better way to think of it is that business is a complex adaptive system. It can self-evolve, self-correct. That's a better metaphor in the 21st century. That leadership's job today is to fulfill the deeper purpose of its enterprise, optimize the health and value of the entire business system, and to be a servant leader to the enterprise that they work in. If you optimize the entire business system, the customers, the team members, the suppliers, the investors, the larger community, and the environment, that will also produce the largest increase in shareholder value and the highest profits, because they're all connected together. They're all interdependent on one another. You can optimize short-term profits, but then you set up, if you do it at the expense of the other stakeholders, you'll set up negative feedback loops that will eventually come back years and begin to short-circuit what you've created. I only know really about Whole Foods, so I'm going to talk about that as a conscious business, but these are some other examples: Google, Costco, the Container Store, Southwest Airlines, Grameen Bank. This is a simple model of what I call a conscious business. It starts with the core values and the mission of the enterprise at the center. And then radiating out from the center like spokes on a wheel are the different interdependent stakeholders. And team member happy, the team members, working with the suppliers and the management to create happy and satisfied customers, which results in motivated investors, which results in community and environmental responsiveness, which leads to greater customer and team member happiness, which leads to greater profits, which leads to a better model would be a spiral, because I think the conscious enterprise moves upward in a spiral, continuing to develop in greater levels of complexity, interdependence. When I go do this talk to team members of Whole Foods Market, I always ask them, what do you think our deeper purpose is, when I get to that slide on the good, the true, the beautiful, and the heroic? And I find the answers fascinating. First of all, I get answers for all four of them. Okay? Somebody at the company's finding the deeper purpose to be one of those four virtues. But the two that stand out, the one that I always thought the deeper purpose was, that I created it for, I might add, was service to others. That it was, it's a retail business. Of course it's there to serve others. But what's fascinating is only about 20% of the team members tell me they think that's the deeper purpose of Whole Foods Market. I get about 20% for that, and about 10% for the true, and about 10% for the beautiful. And overwhelmingly, 60% of the team members tell me that the deeper purpose of Whole Foods is to change and improve the world. That's an example of the purpose co-evolving, that it's beyond those of you that are, well, there are probably not too many parents in the room, but for those of you that are children, which I think we're all qualified to say that we're children of someone, your parents have a vision for you, and for a while that influences you, and then you find your own way in life, or if you're going to develop and evolve. Maybe that aligns with what your parents want, and maybe it doesn't. And we have our breakaway from our parents, our struggle that we have to fulfill our own destiny. Well, Whole Foods is that way. If an entrepreneur creates a business, Whole Foods has its own destiny. I may be the father of Whole Foods, but it doesn't always line up with where I'd like it to go and evolve. And I'm actually, my second talk today, later on this afternoon, I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But what's interesting is that for a long time, our 5 core values, the first 5 were the ones we had. We added, due to feedback from our suppliers who didn't think Whole Foods treated them with the same dignity and respect that we treated, they insulted them about selling stuff at Walmart, that kind of thing, that we created a new core value, encouraging win-win supplier partnerships with our suppliers. We only had that core value for less than a year. And the 7th core value, we're just creating right now. This is the first time it's ever been publicly stated. So I thought we've decided that it's not enough just to sell healthy foods, that we need to actively promote the health, well-being, and longevity of our customers and team members through education about healthy eating. So that's going to start popping up in our stores in the near future. So I'm going to rush through how we're trying to meet some of these core values, selling the highest quality natural and organic foods available. I think the thing I'm most proud about is how many people Whole Foods is now affected in the world, which is, I think, in millions of people. And if you can multiply that by the impact we've had on other grocery chains like Safeway, Kroger, and Walmart, the influence has been even greater. We've also shown that good health and pleasurable eating are not, that those are compatible goals, those aren't opposites. We're trying to offer alternatives to the industrialized degradation of our food, and we're creating higher animal welfare standards, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. I always talk about, usually the conscious businesses either put the customer or their employees as the most important. And they're really both equally important. You have to try to optimize value for all of them. But at Whole Foods, I teach that the customers are the most important stakeholder, because I don't want the team members to be too full of themselves, that I need for them to remember that they have a goal outside of their own happiness. You know, the retail business is really very simple. If your customers are happy, your business is going to be successful. And if they're not, they won't be. And if those of you that are going to go out and start your own businesses someday, actually I'm kind of curious, how many of you hope that someday you will create your own business? Wow, that's a lot. I asked that question in Japan a few years ago, and only one guy raised his hand. I think he's probably bounced out of the school after I left. We talk about the customers and team members both being treated as ends instead of means. And that means that their well-being and their happiness has to be a primary goal of the enterprise. Customers and team members are not stupid. They know when you're doing a sales job on them, and they know when you are trying to trick them and that you don't really care about them. So you have to treat them as an ends and not a means. You have to put their well-being and interest first, even if at times it's not in the enterprise's short-term best interest. In Whole Foods' case, we've organized our company into self-managing work teams. We did this long before almost anybody else was doing it. We have an open information philosophy, that there aren't any secrets in the organization. We talked about shared purpose and empowerment. We've also tried to set up a culture that is what I call an empowerment culture, and it's a rejection of the command and control structures. You know, the command and control, do it my way or the highway. That is not a very good strategy for motivating people, I have found, particularly young, creative, highly intelligent people, that they need to engage, they need to enlist, they need to take on the purpose of the enterprise, and then they need to be given permission and encouraged to carry out that purpose in their own unique, creative ways. have a philosophy of shared fate. The better the organization does, the better the people that work for the organization does, and the better the people that work for the organization, the better the company does. Happy team members equals happy customers equals happy investors. Some of the things Whole Foods does, we have open salary information so what everybody else gets paid is available to everybody. It's transparency. That creates some envy, but it promotes justice. We also have a salary cap, which is 19 times the average pay. That's gone up from 8 times to 10 times to 14 times to 19 times. An enterprise has always got to you have a tension between what I call external equity, what the market pays, and internal equity, what everybody else in the organization is getting paid. In the organization, Whole Foods Market has to pay attention to external equity because all these supermarket chains are trying to hire away our people. We won't want to lose them to them. At the same time, we have to be conscious of what everybody else is getting paid so we have a relatively flat compensation system. We give stock options to everybody in our company, and 93% are given to non-executives. We have fully paid health insurance for all full-time people, which is 90% of our team members, and the other team members can buy it with their own money. And we have been one of the 100 best companies to work for 12 years in a row. We made it again this year to number 22. Basically, CEOs who are getting really rich, probably not servant leaders. Here you can see that how it's gone up. In 1980, the average pay was a multiple of about 40 times. The average CEO's pay was about 40 times the average. By 1990, that had gone up to 100 times. And in the 2000s, it's gone up between 350 and 400 times the average pay. Most Fortune 500 companies, the top 5 executives receive 75% of the stock options. Everybody else gets 25%. At Whole Foods, the top 16 executives get 7% and 93% to everyone else. Although, with our stock down so much with the market crash, that doesn't mean anything. All the stock options are worthless. I do think, oftentimes, by the time I get to this part in the talk, people have, this guy's anti-profit. You know, what's he got against shareholder value? All that stuff about profit and whatnot, purpose. Actually, I think profits are very important. You cannot fulfill your mission if you're not profitable. In fact, the more money Whole Foods Market makes, the better we're able to fulfill our mission. So they are simpatico. And I do believe that we are stewards of the wealth that the shareholders have entrusted to us. Profits create the wealth, the capital, and the prosperity of our society. And that basically all technological progress in the world today is fueled through savings or fueled through profits. It's one of my favorite slides because it shows how much progress humanity has made in the last 200 years. Translating both $1820 to $2003, did you realize that 200 years ago, 85% of the people alive on the planet Earth, 85% of the people lived on less than $1 a day? That had dropped down to 50% 130 years later. But it's now dropped to about 20% around the world. That has been through capitalism. That has been through business. That has been through the corporations and through passionate entrepreneurs creating enterprises, and that's spreading around the world. We've literally had hundreds of millions of people lift out of poverty in the last 20 years in India and China alone. There are people alive in this room today that will live to see the end of poverty on the planet Earth if we don't screw it up through nuclear war or backtracking towards communism and socialism. And hey, since I'm eating in Whole Foods, I expect to be one of those people, but we'll see. Whole Foods is doing its part to create prosperity. We have been the fastest growing and the most profitable publicly food retailer in the United States for the last 10 years. Even with the slowdown in sales, we produced a 9% same-store sales growth rate over the last decade, Our sales per square foot are approximately 100% greater than the average supermarket chain in the United States. And even with our stock price collapsing 85% in the last 3 years, we still increased 500% since our IPO. We do want to have win-win relationships with our suppliers. And our success would not be possible without a close partnership with our suppliers. And our success has helped enterprises like Honest Tea to grow and flourish and sell out for huge amounts of money. And we're very happy to have helped empower that possibility. This is the most exploding area right now for our local suppliers, is in local products. And to promote that, Whole Foods Market has set aside $10 million that we're making in loans. We've now made 42 loans all around the United States to small producers so they can have the capital they need in order to not need to sell out, hopefully, but also to grow and flourish. We also have an emphasis on ethical trade. Whole Foods Market is deeply committed to ethical trade in the developing world, and we've put it under a brand name we call the Whole Trade Guarantee, and we work with various certifiers like Transfair, Flow, Rainforest Alliance, and new one, the Institute of Market Ecology, to do the labor certification and the environmental sustainability certification. And then we match or guarantee that the prices we pay to the suppliers will be at least equal to or better than the fair trade prices that are set. And we donate 1% of our sales to from Whole Trade to our Whole Planet Foundation. And we're going to do over $200 million in Whole Trade guaranteed products in 2009. So $2 million will be granted to the foundation for that. Our company has a deep commitment to the community's environment. We consider these both to be stakeholders, and that we are trying to optimize our relationships with them. And I think the best way to think about it is in terms of the citizen metaphor, that just like corporations are treated as a fictitious citizen, they're treated as if they were an individual, so must that corporation have responsibilities in the communities that it does business with. And that in Whole Foods' case, we therefore have local, national, and global responsibilities. Now, we give most of our donations locally, and we think that that contributes to shareholder value, that they're that interdependent circle that I showed you before, that it creates goodwill with our customers, our team members, our investors, our suppliers, to be a good citizens in the communities. That philanthropy, contrary to the criticisms made of it, is not a win-lose proposition where you're taking something from the shareholders and getting nothing in return. In fact, it's a win-win scenario, not a win-lose one. We do give 5% of our net profits to not-for-profit organizations, or a minimum of 5%. Some years it's more than that. And we tend to do about 80% of our donations are given locally to literally thousands of community organizations in the communities that we do business in. The Whole Planet Foundation is working with the Grameen Bank to do microcredit loans around the world. And we've only been doing it for 4 years. But we're already in 9 countries, and we've just did one in Queens, New York, in fact, recently. 99% of these microcredit loans are to women. We have no collateral, no contract, and yet we have a 99% repayment rate. We've now impacted 27,000 women, and if you multiply that times their family, we've had an impact of over 100,000 people now in this program in less than 4 years. Eventually, our goal is every community that Whole Foods Market trades in the developing world, we want to have a Whole Planet microcredit institution established there. Whole Foods is deeply committed to being a good environment, having good relationships with the environment. They're the silent stakeholder. Basically, every other one of the stakeholders can whine to you. The customers complain about being whole paycheck. The team members complain they're not paid enough. The suppliers are always, you have to struggle and negotiate discounts and deals with them. The communities are going to get taxes and donations. But who represents the environment? The environment cannot make its voice heard. So it's essential that enterprises take this responsibility on themselves. Some of the things Whole Foods has done, we're very committed to sustainable seafood. We were the first supermarket in the United States to align with the Marine Stewardship Council, and we promote their sustainable products in our stores. For the last several years, we've had 100% of our energy done through wind energy credits. We have a commitment to green building in our stores. We have green mission teams that are locally driven. And this is an exciting idea. Our stores actually organize green mission teams where team members come together and they make suggestions on the way the store can be more environmentally sustainable. And what's fascinating about that is all the bubble-up ideas that occur. The local teams network with their peers in the region and around the company, and the best green mission ideas end up getting spread through the whole organization. What's fascinating is the millennial generation, the generation now, which many of the people in this students here, is incredibly environmentally sensitive. And they are the ones at Whole Foods Market that are driving this. We may have started it, my generation may have started this commitment, but what the younger generation is telling us, you haven't gone nearly far enough. There's so much more we need to do here. And so they are championing it, they are pushing it. Although I like to make this joke sometimes that I've been hacking away in the jungle for the last 30 years trying to carve a path out. And some young people come up in an air-conditioned SUV and ask, is this as far as you've gotten? And it's like, get out of the car and take up the machete and start hacking away here with me. One thing Whole Foods is deeply committed to is animal welfare. And one of the dark secrets in America that people have not been willing to look at is what we are doing to our livestock animals. And I used to show a little 5-minute clip in this presentation. It got people so upset that I stopped showing it because it showed what's happening in our factory farms. And what Whole Foods is trying to do is we set up our own animal welfare standards, and we're doing it not on an all or nothing standard such as organic is. In organic, if you qualify for organic, you have no incentive to improve beyond the minimum threshold. Here, we have a 5-step program that allows animal farmers to improve their welfare practices so they can get up. And so they're going to be branded and labeled, in our case, by what step they're at. By the way, step 0 is what 99% of the product that's raised in America is right now, is step 0. It wouldn't even, it's in, the animals are in cages and crates, and their welfare is totally irrelevant to the production process. So we're going to launch this program in the South in March, and before 2009 is over, we should have it in all of our regions. So look forward if you get to our stores. Here you can see what the labels will look like on the product. Have I been talking about corporate social responsibility, CSR? I want to make a distinction here, the differences between CSR and conscious capitalism. These are not synonyms. They are not the same thing. This is a different vision. Corporate social responsibility is a good thing, but it's not nearly enough. Why not? Because it's basically taking the old paradigm of traditional capitalism and simply grafting an obligation that you have to do something for the community. It doesn't transform the way people think about the business enterprise. It remains shareholder-oriented instead of stakeholder-oriented. It has nothing to do with corporate purpose except for maximizing profits. It adds an ethical and financial goal to business goals, whereas the conscious capitalism reconciles caring and profitability through higher synergies. CSR is consistent with the traditional mechanistic model that we think of business, whereas the conscious business is a self-adaptive, holistic, complex system. The best way, though, is to recognize that traditional CSR is simply grafting an artificial philosophy on, usually handled by the PR department in most corporations. Why it's rightfully called greenwashing. Because the corporation is doing what it needs to do to get favorable publicity, but it doesn't fundamentally care. It hasn't really transformed itself to make it part of the DNA of the enterprise. CSR also generally tends to assume that all good deeds are equally desirable. And I'll submit that the conscious business is attempting to make its social responsibility, environmental responsibility, part of its core mission. It's not, and so that you focus on the social responsibility and the environmental that's consistent with everything else that your business is doing, that aligns with it. It's not an add-on. Let me push down through, just briefly talk a little bit about not-for-profit organizations, because they have something to teach business. They get the thing about purpose. They are all motivated by a deeper purpose. That is the great lesson that they have to teach the business world today. Unfortunately, they are not able to transcend self-interest just because they have a deeper purpose. And they oftentimes have sort of an anti-business, anti-corporation, and anti-profit mentality which holds them back from reaching their fullest potential, therefore making them not as sustainable as they could be over the long term. In fact, they also need to develop to a higher holistic model. And I've modeled out the conscious non-profit organizational model. Does that look familiar? It's exactly the same as the conscious business. The only difference is, instead of having a business mission, it has a social mission. And instead of having motivated investors, it has motivated donors. Otherwise, the model is very, very similar. And that's important to realize because of the incredible bifurcation that we have in our society today, where we think of the not-for-profit as good and altruistic, that it's doing all kinds of wonderful things for our society. And on the other side of the wall are these greedy, selfish, exploitative corporations who only care about money, are ruining the environment routinely. I mean, did you know that 99% of the murders that you see on television are committed by businessmen? That's a fact. 99%. We are the biggest murderers out there. Inevitably, when you have environmental issues, it's a corporation that's doing the despoiling. This is how the stereotypes in America are today. The good and the evil. The not-for-profits and the corporations. I want to tear the wall down. I want to tear this wall down. That basically this idea that on the one hand is selfishness, I win, you lose, and on the other hand is altruism and self-sacrifice, I lose and you win, that's not a good model. We need the Aristotelian golden mean here. And that is what I would call creative love. Love of self and love of others. If we start with loving ourselves and extend that to our family, and then our friends, then our larger tribe and our larger company, our nation, our race, we can expand that love to all of humanity, eventually all mammals, and potentially all sentient beings, and to all of existence. I want us to evolve in the 21st century from traditional capitalism to conscious capitalism, from the profit focus to the purpose focus, where only shareholders win to all the stakeholders win, from short-term to long-term, from zero-sum to win-win-win, from self-centered to holistic, from conflicts of interest to harmony of interest, from parasitic to mutualistic, from exploitative to creating value, from trade-offs to synergies, from disliked and hated to value and loved, to not trusted to trusted. This is what we can create in the 21st century, a whole new way to think about enterprise, a whole new way to think about business, and a whole new way to think about capitalism. To just reiterate the three primary purposes. The conscious business or conscious capitalism, the enterprise has a deeper purpose that includes but goes beyond maximizing profits and shareholder value. The enterprise is managed to optimize value on behalf of all of the stakeholders, and servant leadership to the enterprise and to its stakeholders is the purpose and function of the leadership of the enterprise. Thanks very much.